In the vast expanse of the Andromeda cluster, where empires clashed and civilizations thrived in the silent ballet of the cosmos, the mighty Zyphar Dominion ruled with an iron fist. Their queen, Virela the Unyielding, was a name whispered in reverence and fear across the stars. Her empire spanned entire solar systems. Her fleets darkened the skies of 100 worlds, and her enemies trembled before the inexorable march of her warriors. Yet, even for a ruler as powerful as she, ghosts of the past could not be silenced. As she stepped onto the observation deck of her flagship, the Celestial Wrath, Virela's icy gaze scanned the screens before her. The war with the Terrans had been costly, but victory was inevitable. Humanity had proven stubborn, their worlds fiercely defended, but in the end, they were no match for Zyphar's might. Now, the final battle was at hand. The Terran capital itself, Earth, was within her grasp. Her generals stood at attention as she addressed them, her voice a razor's edge. They spoke of strategies, troop movements, and surrender demands. None of it concerned her. This was a war that needed to be won, and she would ensure it. Her heart was a fortress, her will unbreakable, until she saw him. The moment Virela's golden eyes fell upon the figure displayed on the monitor, an invisible force clamped around her chest. The Terrans had surrendered, their leaders kneeling before her. But it was not them who held her gaze. It was the man standing at the side of the human general, clad in the black uniform of the Terran Guard. Tall, imposing, and sharp-eyed, he held an air of quiet strength, and his features, his features. He looked exactly like Therion. Virela's breath hitched, and for the first time in her life, she hesitated. Her posture stiffened as she fought to control the wave of memories crashing over her. Memories she had buried beneath centuries of war and conquest. Therion, her mate, her king, betrayer, and beloved in equal measure. She had lost him long ago, his name erased from history, his existence nothing but a painful whisper in the dark corners of her mind. And yet, here he was, or at least, his ghost, reincarnated in the form of a human. Her moment of silence did not go unnoticed. General Vexer, her most trusted commander, stepped forward, concern flashing across his reptilian features. "My queen, is something amiss?" Virela snapped out of her stupor. Her claws flexed, curling into fists as she willed herself to speak. "Who is that?" The human general, sensing the shift in power, turned his head toward the man in question. "This is Captain Elias Carter, one of our finest officers." Elias Carter. A Terran name. A human name. Not Therion. Not her mate. And yet, Virela took a step forward, scrutinizing him. Elias met her gaze unflinchingly, his blue eyes steady. If he felt fear, he did not show it. He merely stood at attention, awaiting whatever fate she decided for him. Her mind raced. This was absurd. Impossible. Humans and Zypharians were fundamentally different species, separated by thousands of years of evolution. There was no way this man could truly be Therion. And yet, her heart screamed otherwise. She turned sharply, her regal demeanor returning. "Take him," she commanded. "I wish to speak with him. Alone." Elias did not resist as two Zypharian guards flanked him, leading him away. His comrades exchanged worried glances, but they knew better than to protest. A Terran prisoner was nothing in the grand scheme of things. The war was over. Their defeat was sealed. As Virela followed, she forced herself to remain calm. She was the queen of Zyphar. She had conquered empires, shattered worlds, and bent civilizations to her will. She would not allow herself to falter over a ghost. Yet, deep in the pit of her soul, she knew that this was not the end. This was the beginning of something far more dangerous than war. And for the first time in centuries, Queen Virela was afraid. Elias Carter walked with measured steps, his expression unreadable as the Zypharian guards led him through the gleaming corridors of the Celestial Wrath. He could feel their eyes on him, cold, assessing, wary. The queen's interest in him had shifted the balance of the room, and now, he was no longer just another defeated soldier. He was something more. He just didn't know what. Virela followed a few paces behind, her mind a battlefield of its own. Every instinct told her this was a trick, a coincidence, an illusion. And yet, the way he carried himself, the strength in his stance, the controlled intensity in his gaze, felt too familiar, too real. They entered a private chamber. the doors sealing shut behind them with a hiss. The guards remained outside. Inside, the space was vast but stark, walls adorned with intricate Zypharian script that told stories of conquest and glory. A single window overlooked the void, the endless sprawl of space stretching beyond it. Elias turned to face her. "So," he said, his voice calm, steady. "What happens now?" Virela studied him in silence, crossing the distance between them until she was close enough to feel the warmth radiating from his body. He did not flinch. "What are you?" she demanded. His brow furrowed. "I think that was obvious. Captain Elias Carter, Terran Defense Forces." She narrowed her eyes. "Do not insult me with lies. You are more than that." He exhaled sharply, frustration flickering across his face. "With all due respect, Your Majesty, I have no idea what you're talking about." She circled him slowly, her gaze sharp, predatory. "You look like him. You stand like him. You even hold your silence as he once did. But you are human." Therion was not. Elias remained still, though she could see his mind working behind those striking blue eyes. "Therion," he repeated, testing the name. "You think I'm him?" "No," she snapped. "I do not believe in miracles." And yet, she had not killed him on sight. Elias tilted his head. "Then why am I here?" Virela hated that she did not have an answer. She should have executed him alongside the others, or at the very least, thrown him into the dungeons to rot. But something deep inside her, the same part that had never truly let go of Therion, refused. Her voice dropped to something quieter, more dangerous. "Tell me, Captain Carter, have you ever felt as though you did not belong? As if you were searching for something just beyond your grasp?" Something flickered in his eyes, something she almost missed. A hesitation, a doubt. It was gone in an instant, replaced by cold logic. "We all question our place in the universe," he said. "War does that to a man." Virela almost laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You sound just like him." Elias exhaled through his nose. "I don't know who Therion was to you, but I'm not him." "No," she said again, but softer this time. "You are not." And yet, she reached out before she could stop herself, fingers brushing his temple. Elias stiffened but did not pull away. With a murmur in her native tongue, a golden energy pulsed from her palm, a wave of psychic resonance rippling between them. Elias inhaled sharply as images surged through his mind. A throne bathed in twilight. A warrior king standing at Virela's side. A promise made in the heat of war. A betrayal. A death. A love that burned brighter than the stars. His breath came faster as the visions faded. He swayed on his feet, but did not fall. Virela withdrew her hand. Her expression was unreadable, but inwardly, her heart pounded. He had seen it. He had felt it. For centuries, she had believed Therion's soul lost to the void, shattered beyond recovery. But now, before her stood a man who bore his shadow. A man who carried echoes of what once was. Fate, it seemed, was not yet finished with them. Elias swallowed hard, his voice hoarse. What the hell was that? Virela turned away, staring into the abyss of space. "A question," she murmured. "One I do not yet know how to answer." Silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future. But one thing was certain. This war was far from over, and the battle for Elias Carter's soul had only just begun.